Stacy, you're the only one courageous enough to actually be live. By the way, folks, we're still waiting a couple of minutes here for everybody to get online. I apologize. I'm having a day. You guys probably can tell because I sniffle a lot that I have allergies, and I don't know if it's ragweed in the air or something, but it is kicking my butt, and I woke up with vampire eyes and the whole sniffle thing. So my apologies today if I kind of sniffle through this. Secondly, about a month and a half, 2 months ago, a storm came through and ripped pieces of my shingles off. And so today's the day that they put a new roof on my house. They're literally just above my head, banging the hell out of my roof. And they're not bad at the moment, but it may get kind of sound like a battle zone here in a few minutes. And if that's the case, my apologies, but we're going to, just keep going and get through it. But in case you start hearing lots of banging and banging, that's what it is. So combination of all that plus me crying, sniffling, and sneezing on you. Sorry. I won't do that in your ears too much, sorry. Well, we're going to wait till we get to at least 20. We're getting closer. $19. Come on. I need one more. Yes. We were at about 40, 45. And if you combine Dr. Purtell's class with mine, that's probably 325, 330 people. That was over 10%, 12 and a half, 13% probably. We're dropping here a little bit. Not too unexpected because of course we just had the test in the external template, but okay, well, I'll tell you what, I am going to go ahead and get started. And for those of you just joining me, my apologies. I am getting crushed with allergies today, so I'm a little bit red-eyed and sniffly and stuff. And I also have the roof being done above my head. It may get bad here in a few minutes with loud noise. And if it is, just send me a text or a little chat. Let me know, and I'll do what I can to increase the volume or something on my end. So, one of the things there's so much that I could jump into right now, and I probably will here in a second, but I am going to open it up to questions, and I expect you guys probably have some. You've now received my feedback on the external analysis. You've taken the test. You guys did, pretty well on the test in my sections. There were a couple of questions that were technically correct. They were written correctly, but enough of you didn't get it right that I felt, we're always trying to make sure that we ask fair questions, right? And so if a relatively low percentage of you get it right, then this isn't how it used to be done. But in my world, I think that maybe I could have done a better job of explaining it, right? Now that's tough to do when I'm actually not teaching you in front of face-to-face. So I can actually point to you from my lectures and from the book where every one of those questions came from, right? So it shouldn't have been a surprise, but nonetheless, you ended up with a pretty good average in my 3 sections. In fact, I think it's probably the highest of of all the sections there, but part of that is just because I think we spend a lot more time together going through some of this stuff. But all the sections were close. We always make sure that they're close and um, uh, comparable and equitable and fair, so that if you're in another section outside of mine, then you can be comfortable that you are getting an equitable and fair classroom experience. Actually, all the professors are great, so it is not a worry in this class. So before I sort of jump into a couple of things, do you guys have questions? And I guess that you probably might. This is Q&A first and foremost, so whether you put it in the chat or whether you turn on your speaker.
I do have a question.
Hi, Marisol.
Hello. So on the external analysis, the part, I believe it was it number 4, where you had asked to list stuff. Can you briefly go over what we did wrong on that?
Yeah, so so that's where I gave points, because there was a disconnect there, right? My concern with almost everybody, not everybody, but most people's responses is, I'm going to get away from content for a second, because there were some problems on content, but you did a crap load of work. You did a bunch of research, right? And we even sort of laid it out for you. Here, go look at these types of financial things, and go, look at Porter's stuff, and go look at these general things, and make sure you ask these questions. That is something that didn't used to be done, right? We're trying to do it now. I'll come back to that, Celeste. That's a good question. Is actually try to give you a framework, but that's not the only research you're supposed to do, right? But we go through that, and you guys did all this work, and you knew from the rubric, sorry, this is my frustration a little bit, my apologies, but you knew from the rubric that which got scored, except you might have lost a point or two, and I actually, we tried to pull back so that we took maybe a point or two max. We were trying not to take a lot of points away from your research, okay? There were a couple of places where you might have lost a point or two, but instead of taking 5 or 6 points off, we might have taken 1 or 2 for most of you at most. But you've got the 4 parts up top where you're supposed to extract from all that research the important stuff. And one of the reasons that we're doing that is because we have found in previous semesters, people get so focused on finding the numbers and filling in the numbers and answering the template that they're not doing what they're really supposed to do, which is, okay, so what does all this mean? Right? How do I pull from all this work that I've just done to take away the important stuff, to synthesize from that a summary of where are we? Because that's what you need when you're about to go do the strategy formulation. You're not going to go back and take the 2017 revenue growth rate number, right? What you're trying to take away is the trends and the important things. And so what we decided to do this year is to try to help you guys by saying, look, extract from all that work the important stuff, okay? Do it for the financials. I didn't want pages of answer for each of the 4 questions, but I didn't want a paragraph. Right? And in some cases, and on your question number 4, look, first one is financial. There should have been a whole discussion, well-formed, good grammar, edited, checked, right? As to the financial trends and growth and status and situation and comparable to other industries. And therefore we believe there should have been on the Porter's 5 forces. By the way, it's just Porter's 5 forces in that section. It's not the economy, it's not general stuff, it's just Porter in that, okay? You needed to go and do paragraphs. You probably should have had a paragraph per force, right? I mean, so it's not pages, but it's not a paragraph where you mention one thing, right? This is worth 25% of your grade, and I was getting sometimes a paragraph with a mention of buyer power, right? And that caught us off guard a little bit, because that wasn't the point of the summary. We're supposed to extract and summarize. In the 4th bullet, this was supposed to be, what's the overall takeaway? Now, I added points because I didn't technically say, even though it says in the rubric, this is 30 points. This is the biggest point production one of the entire template, right? Because I didn't add that next bulletin that says describe and explain, or some language like that, because I didn't put that, and that's my bad. I assumed you guys kind of knew, hey, this is the 30-point one, this is the big summary one. You know, I've just given him the financial and the porter and the this, and now I need to prioritize. Now I need to do that. What's the big takeaway from all of this? I didn't use those words. Okay, my bad. And so I went ahead and I added some points for that, because I'll take that on my shoulders. But I was absolutely expecting that this was your big overall, here's what I got from the external analysis that we just did, right? And so one of the things that I really want you to take back to your teams, and for anybody who's watching this recording, okay, is I yesterday went back, and you may not have this, not a big deal because I'm telling you about it right now, but when you download the internal environment template, okay, I have added, you know, a little bullet at the end of each one. Please provide a robust discussion, okay, for each of these questions, because that's what the summary was intended to be, is to, okay, what did you get from all this? And then at the end, you know, you combine it. So forgive my frustration. I'm not trying to be bad, but we'll find better ways on our part to explain expectations. But please understand that's why we were a little bit taken back, is maybe there wasn't good communication, maybe there wasn't. But when you see that something's worth 30% of your grade, and some people put down 5 bullets with 1 or 2 words per bullet, and some of you, I'm sorry, but you sent me. Some of you literally put this. This is IBIS SWOT analysis. And I saw people take 4 or 5 bullets from this damn thing and put it in as their question number 4 answer. That sent me. You've got a month to do this, and you copy a couple of bullets right off of IBIS? Sorry, folks, but okay, that's not what we were looking for. Okay, sorry. Sorry. You know, this is graduating senior stuff, folks. Come on. Okay. So there's a question in here, since the group leader submitted, okay, comments. So we wrote comments to you guys, and we were trying to put annotated comments in the actual text. And because I was saying the same thing over and over again, over in the rubric, I put really lengthy comments. And apparently you guys can't see it except the leader. I didn't know that. Is there somebody here, the 23 of us, the 22 of you, I thought you could go out, and in the top right corner, there was somebody damn near fell through my roof, guys, sorry. So in the upper right-hand corner, there was a see comments, and then in the far right corner, at the very top right corner, there was a, you know, open rubric, and I thought everybody could see that. If it's just the team leads, the ones who submitted it, I didn't know that. And please ask your team lead to open it up, copy, and send it to you. And if any of you know how people who are not the team leads can access that through Canvas, please let me know so I can pass it on to people. But right now, you know, check with your team leads. Your team leads should be able to see all of that, and they can copy and paste, or in fact, I think I just did part of that. So what I did, just to let you know, this page and a quarter, and I can send it to you guys if you want. This page and a quarter is my comments in the rubric. I put a lot of comments in the rubric, right? And I sort of went through each one to a certain degree. And if you guys are interested, I'll send it out, or I'll put it out on Canvas. How about that, right? And that way, for those people who are not able to see their comments. So Celeste, would that be helpful if I put that out, at least the rubric comments? Because I can't put out the individual annotated comments per every person's submission, because that's embedded in the submission, right? But I'll put this out there. Cool, I'll do that. Anything else? Because I'm going to probably start by walking through some of my comments. Any other question? Marisol, I don't know if I answered your question number 4, and I hope I did.
You did. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Professor. I have a question.
Yes, Sandra?
In our group, we were discussing, do you care about the limit that we write on each bulletin point? Or like, does it matter? You know how we answer with bulletin points? We were thinking now of doing bigger paragraph forms, but would that affect our grade?
I think what you're asking, so let me give you an answer and see if this is what you're asking. I do want you to keep your answers in the templates, and I would like you to start your answer with a bullet so that I can see this answer is going to go with that question. It's a thing that helps me grade, okay? And when we put things in and I get it, I understand why it might be helpful to you, but when we put it in sort of prose form, it's really tough for me to be able to know what answer is going with what question, and whether or not you've answered the whole question. So it is a little bit, it shouldn't be that tough for you, but what it does is, because you only have this much of a page, right, because you're dealing with the box instead of the full page, it sort of extends further, right, down, because you're squeezing it. I'm okay with that.
But does the length matter? Or do you want it like short and concise?
No. So that's kind of, that's the point I was trying to make, okay, is when we're at the summary level, one paragraph is probably not enough for these answers, right? But I don't want pages. And by pages, I mean, if you were to have written it in prose form, using the whole page, I don't need pages. But I'm expecting paragraphs.
Okay.
Per answer. Does that help? It's not short. It's not. Yeah, it's a robust answer. So for example, and let me open this up for a second. So these are the answers, and this is being recorded, so you guys can probably see this, and I'm going to leave it up for a second, but you can always pause the recording and read what's on the screen. So here I'm basically saying, hey, this section was worth 20% of your grade. It's supposed to be a much more robust discussion. There's a lot more information that you guys put in the research, bring it up top. In Porter's 5 Forces model, I started giving you guys answers, right? Or at least guidance on answers. So, you know, what was the strongest force in Porter? It's clearly rivalry, right? It's clearly rivalry. Are these companies fighting for, hey, come to my cruise ship? Please come to my cruise line. Here, let me offer you different types of cruises and things. Absolutely. If you have high rivalry, can you have an oligopoly? By definition, you cannot, right? An oligopoly is nothing to do with the concentration. People often say, oh, there's only 3 major companies in that industry, or 4 or 5, therefore it must be an oligopoly. That's not what an oligopoly is. An oligopoly only exists when a group of companies come together and cooperate. It's called collusion, right? Cooperate to force and have the power to be able to force, in this case, an oligopoly is the seller, so force the buyers to be able to pay for a persistent period of time above normal economic prices, right? You're charging the hell out of me because you can. Right? That's an oligopoly. But there are constraints. If those companies don't cooperate to work together to keep prices high, or if there are substitutes, or if there are low barriers to entry so that other people can come in, or I'll just go to Vegas instead of getting on a cruise because you're charging me $45,000 for this ticket, you know, there are things that can keep the prices down. So it's not the number of companies that determines an oligopoly. So rivalry is obviously number one. And then I go through this, and I go through supplier power. It's at best moderate, it's probably weak. I mean, you could, and I say here, Let me separate that out so it's easier to read. Oh, you can't even see this. I'm not sharing my screen. Nobody told me that I was not sharing my screen. I'm sorry. My apologies. Let me share the screen. I thought I was sharing. Sorry, folks. Now you can see what I'm talking about, okay? So what I was saying is this, the finance section, this is what I wrote, right, in the responses. And then I started getting into, in the responses, I went through each one of these. Rivalry is the strongest. Supplier is at best a moderate force, probably weak. Now, the people who make refrigerators that go into the restaurants of a cruise ship have no power over the cruise ship. The people who make ropes or towels or sheets or food or air conditioning, or they don't have any power over the cruise ships. The only people that you could maybe make an argument for, and some people did and got an extra half point or a point depending upon what they said with it, was shipbuilders, right? Which is this group right here. But the problem is there aren't a whole lot of companies with enough capital to be customers of shipbuilders. So the shipbuilders really can't extract a whole lot of above normal economic value, because ultimately you would drive the cruise ships to either different kinds of ships, which is now the river cruises, for example, or you drive them out of business, because those are huge capital costs. Okay, so if somebody made an argument about shipbuilders, maybe, yeah, maybe, okay, it depends upon how you made your argument. Threat of new entry is low. However, some of these luxury cruise line ships, now they're not the same amenities, and they're for somewhat different target audience. So I mean, it's not a great substitute, but multi-day luxurious meals. You go and they have things set for you when you go into towns. Is that new entry? Right. If there are enough differences between the services provided, you may say it's not in the same industry. Okay. Substitutes. Planes and trains are not substitutes, because you're not getting on a cruise to go somewhere. I mean, you're not trying to say, hey, I need to go from, Clint's joining us. Hey, Clint, I need to go from Fort Lauderdale to Caracas, right? I think I'll take a cruise ship. I mean, if you've got to get somewhere, you're going to go ahead and take a plane. So cruise ships aren't about the transportation. It's about the experience and the entertainment and the luxury and the food and all of that stuff. Well, where can you get something somewhat similar? If you go to a Wynn or a Bellagio or the Venetian, for those of you who have been to Vegas, there are some high-end resort casino hotels. Do they offer casinos? Absolutely. Some of the best dining in the world? Absolutely. Some amazing shows? Cirque du Soleil? Absolutely. Right? Can you play golf? Can you get massages? Can you do most of the same things you would do on a cruise? Absolutely. Is it a cruise? No. But if I'm a little afraid of getting on a cruise ship because of everything that's going on, but I still want that kind of experience, could I just fly to Vegas? Probably, right? So, there aren't a lot of substitutes, but there are a couple. Buyer power. So the only reason buyer power might be something other than low is because technically now we have the internet, right? And we have the ability to scan and search, and you don't have to go through certain travel agents necessarily all the time. And because I can compare so easily, it really forces providers of transportation or vacations or cruises or whatever, or hotels, I can't just consistently charge super high prices, because the buyers, they know that the prices are so high they can go elsewhere. So the buyers help to keep prices in line, but they can't force the cruises to sell at prices that are so low that it's below the long-term normal price. They don't have that power. So when you took a look at opportunities, Porter's all about power and threat. This is right out of the lectures, right? He's this IO economist, sort of the paranoid economics, frankly, right? And how can the buyer screw me? And how can the supplier screw me? And am I going to be taken over by, a substitute? Or it is tough to find opportunities when you're looking at Porter's model. You could possibly have made an argument about barriers to entry, right? But that's not incremental. That's already there. So it's not like this new opportunity that's arising. It's kind of already there. So you could have made an argument. I probably would have given you a little bit of credit for that. But okay, so I'm going to stop for a second and go back to my screen. Hey, Clint, how are you, man?
I'm good.
So I apologize, Clint. I'm getting crushed with allergies, and they're changing my roof today, and they're pounding the hell right above me. So I don't know if you can hear it or not, but my apologies. So we've had a little bit of chat, and a couple of people asked me, well, what were you looking for? Because a lot of the answers were quite short. And in my classes, some of the answers, I added like 4 points out of the one at the end that was 30 points, because I didn't specifically say, hey, describe and explain. I said list and prioritize, so people put a couple bullets down, and that isn't what we were looking for in that sort of summary of summaries section. So I made a little adjustment on that for my teams, and really trying to get the point across that I don't want a paragraph answer. I mean, this is all your points are coming from the summary stuff, and I don't want pages per answer, right? But I'm expecting paragraphs, and I was able to share some of those better expectations with the team. And then I wrote really lengthy, because I was saying the same thing over and over again, right? So I wrote really lengthy responses, and I just ended up copying and pasting me in every rubric, because a lot of the answers were the same, but I also gave a lot of annotated comments directly into their responses, right? So that's what I'm going over now. Is these are actually the responses I gave to my students in their rubrics, where I was trying to say, probably should have been this, not so much this, and that's what I'm going through at the moment, okay? And I'm going to finish this up over the next few minutes. Can you guys hear that? You can't hear the banging? Okay, I feel better about that, but if you suddenly see me jump, okay, it's because I thought somebody was breaking my roof. I'm going to finish this because I think some people really want to see some responses for external, and then we're going to open it up for internal and other things, okay? In the general section, the two biggest ones are political, legal, and economic. And I have an article that came out today on the CDC and the oh, you're not even looking, I've got to share screen. Here I am talking to something, I haven't shared screen again. So the biggest ones are, political, legal, and economic, okay? And there's just so much evidence for those two. And I'm not even going to give you one. Environment is not. Some of you said, oh, well, these folks are polluting and there might be new legal actions. Any legal actions regarding that is political legal. It's not environment. So if somebody comes up with new laws against, polluting, then, that's political legal. And secondly, and one of the things that I really want to drive home to everybody here is this last bullet, right? Any threat or opportunity needs to have a non-trivial impact on the economic performance of the industry. And it must be incremental to the balance of forces currently affecting the industry. We already have whatever the demographics are affecting the industry. We already have whatever the political, legal laws are. It has to be a change, because if it's just whatever it is now, then it's not an opportunity, right? Or it is what it is, and the industry is already adjusting to it. If you expect the CDC to continue to extend the no cruise law, that's a potential threat, right? But that's an extension of. And now historically, what's one of the biggest things that affected this industry? It's not just the pandemic, right? It's what the pandemic caused. It caused the government to say, you shall not cruise. CDC, you can't go operate. It caused the economy to crash, right? And with nobody has any money, they're not going to go cruising even if they could. So it's not the fact that we have this pandemic, it's what the pandemic has caused on these factors that are affecting us. So anyway, let me walk through this. Look, folks, the weather. We already have an industry that deals with bad weather. Are you telling me that the weather is going to somehow become persistently, profoundly worse than it is now, and we can't deal with it? And I'm not trying to pick on this one, but I know that environment is, look, I'm big into the environment. I've got a renewable power technology because of my love for and desire for a sustainable environment. But it isn't the answer to all the questions, okay? Weather and climate sustainability have no noticeable impact on this industry. Global issues. Global is not really just sort of global economy. Are there actions being taken? And most of the time it's political, right? Where tariffs and things that are being put on, now you could have made an argument here. That's why I say moderate effect. You could have made an argument that other countries are closing their ports, right? Because of the pandemic, or they're ticked off at America for some reason, and so we're in a trade dispute. Fair enough, make those cases. But remember, some of these locations where the cruise ships come in, they have to have the economics boost that comes from the cruise ships, right? It's not all of these are super strong economies where they don't need the added boost of the cruise ship. So there's not necessarily a lot these countries can do, some of these locations can do, so it's moderated, right? So I actually might have put that a little bit weaker, but there are some countries that are taking political legal actions to say no to cruising right now. And socioculture and demographic. How is that a strong factor, right? Now, I could come up with one potential argument, and that's this one, right? The social perceptions of cruising may have changed following the pandemic. Okay, maybe, make your case and explain it. And technology. Again, I'm a big believer in technology, but stop already with the apps. Apps are fine, they're good, they're great, I love them, but they're not going to have a profound economic impact on the industry, right? We're looking at the industry. We're not looking at what makes customers more happy on a specific cruise company. And in the bullet that I wrote, there seems to be some confusion across the team projects. It was worth 30%. The purpose was, to do the final screening and summary. Some of you literally put a couple of bullets and stopped. And this was me saying, this isn't what we wanted, but I'll take some blame for that and I'll give you some points back, okay? But please, the thing that you saw me get a little bit irritated about earlier, and I'm sorry, I'm usually not that way, is literally a couple of teams went to IBIS, took this, pulled 4 or 5 bullets out, stuck in 4 or 5 bullets directly from IBIS, and called that the answer to number 4. And that's when I got a little bit hot, right? Okay. So, folks, I've now just gone through a pretty quick sort of, it took probably 20 minutes, maybe 15, but where I'm going through, look, it's rivalry, it's not this, it's probably not this, here's why these are important, obviously political, legal, and economic. Do you have any questions on the external environment? When you go through all of that, when you look at the financials, and a lot of your financials were wrong, folks. You're giving me information for the industry where you say, oh, it's worse than the GDP. What? Look, let's share something again. And I didn't take a lot of points off for this. There are a lot of places I didn't take points off. Let me show you what I'm talking about. This is the GDP, right off the internet, okay? In the last few years, we've been at, in 2013 to 16, we were at 2.18 average, right? The last 3 years, we've been at a 2.6 average, but it's basically 3.18. We had a good year that year. We're doing better these last 3 years, and the previous years, you know, we're right after a huge drop. So in 2010, 2011 should have been back up at 4%. 2012 should have been at 4.5 to 5%, and it wasn't, right? So the expected rebound that almost always happens. Look at this, for example. You know, back in 82, we had a recession, and look what happened the next couple of years. Huge. Look what happened in this recession. Huge jump. And 91 even, there was a big jump back up, and we were back in the 4s and whatever. We didn't have that this past time, right? So we got back up maybe to the 1.5s and the 2.5s. So to say that the cruise industry is lower than that is actually just not accurate, right? And I saw people putting in GDPs of 5 and 6%. Not sure where you got it from. Okay, and it doesn't take much. I literally pulled this up right before we got on screen today. Okay. I'm not trying to chastise folks, I'm not, but it's not tough to find the GDP numbers, okay? And people put industrial production index as one of the, do you guys even know what that is? Right? Here's the obvious rule definition. It measures the output of mining, manufacturing, electric, and gas. Anyway, competitive landscape, let me move this, right? Profit as a share of revenue for the last X number of years. Profit 6.8, 10, 9, 15. Yes, it's going down, but this is right off of IBIS, folks. These are the numbers that I was expecting to see in there, okay? And you're giving me numbers of -2 and 3%. Finally, I get newspaper accounts. This came out yesterday. This is huge for our case. What just happened yesterday? The CDC extended the ban on cruising. Uh-oh, right? I mean, this is immediately relevant, and this was on CNBC, I think, this particular announcement. Now, there were a couple of people trying to push it until February of 2021. And then, now, I don't know if this source is true. All the stuff is so political these days. I have no idea about causality, but apparently it's been extended, but only for a month or so until October. But nonetheless, the political legal environment has had an immediate and direct and it's significant impact on our industry. And here's yet another case of that, right? Now, if you read this and you go to the end, you can start seeing where people are talking about what they expect for the next couple of years. You know, it's hammered some things, but we expect things to go up. There's a lot of good information in these articles, and all you have to do really is do a Google search for, you know, CDC or cruise lines, and there's just a ton of newspaper articles being written about it right now. Okay, so now you know why I'm saying that your GDP numbers weren't right, because I just showed them to you. Now you're understanding if I did say, and I usually didn't, okay, that your revenue and your profitability numbers didn't seem right. It's because in IBIS, it showed different numbers here, okay? Okay, so Clint, sorry, I'm not trying to be a bad guy here. I'm just literally trying to say, you know, here's really where your answer probably should have been. Here's some of the data I expected to see, and I'm showing people exactly where I pulled it from. Do you have any comments, Clint? I'm going to take a sip here.
You know, I think you're spot on. I still haven't released my class's grades. I still got some things I've got to do on the reviews. The biggest concern I had with my class is, and this is not uncommon necessarily, but there were just a lot of things that weren't answered. It's like they would answer the first part of the box, but they wouldn't finish it out. And so that would require me to go down and search, you know, through the research to see if I could find if they did
that's
it.
Not what you that's not what we asked them to do, though.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So so there was that was a pretty big issue. Sounds like it was consistent with your class. You know, and then the other issue I have, and it's why we structured it this way, is if you're freeloading in this class, you will fail. And I had a few students that actually had team leaders reach out to me with concern beforehand. I reached out to a few students and they won't even respond to me. So they're going to get zeros.
Yeah.
You know, that is one of my pet peeves, big time. I hated being in groups with people who just expected to get, you know, the group grade without contributing at all, or you know, waiting until the very last day to say, okay, now what should I do, when the project was already done. So that's just unacceptable.
Yeah.
That is absolutely unacceptable.
Yeah. So let me.
And the grades will reflect that.
Yeah. Let me comment on that because. Yeah. Yeah. So for those of you who reached out to me, it wasn't all team leaders either, right? Who said, hey, Dr. Corey, what do I do about this? You know, I've got a situation, and people were usually very diplomatic. They were nice. They weren't, you know, Sally Joe Bob is a jerk. I mean, it wasn't that. It was, I'm concerned. I don't know what to do. They didn't, you know, we had assignments, we had dates. They didn't get it on those assignments and dates. They turned it in hours before it was due and it was crap. What am I supposed to do, right? And I actually have a lot of compassion for people who are trying to do well, trying not to be dictatorial. These are your colleagues, right? These are fellow students. It's not like you even have the power to force some of these sorts of things, who feel really stuck. So, I had 13 students, Clint, who ended up having average peer scores where their grades got harmed. And I'm not going to get into it. One student had an issue and was basically absent for a month. And as a result, they did end up getting almost zero. But I'm, you know, that was a situation. I'm going to work with that student on that. But one of the things that I did, and Clint, you and I should probably talk about this offline a little bit. On this very first one, I usually didn't give zeros for people who were really bad. Okay, I usually kept it at a failing score of some level, and so, you know, you and I can talk about that. And
you're referring to if there was some level of contribution that they still got some sort of a grade, or if it was
yeah,
zero,
basically, yeah. Now, if they never showed up, which is that one exception I'm giving you, I mean, never didn't show up, zero, right?
Yeah, right.
But you know, I don't know of too many groups where somebody never showed up. They just showed up really late with crappy work, right? So, you know, you and I can talk about that off to the side. But
that's pretty consistent with what I did. I gave, if there was, well, you know, honestly, I didn't have any groups. I had pretty fair grading, I would say, based on the comments. Now, we haven't released my grades, so I don't have the feedback yet of, hey, it wasn't fair what I got. Which I will expect, but I don't think I had really many people that were graded to a point where the team passed, but the individual didn't. I do have some. Yeah.
So the reason we're having this conversation in front of you, and the reason that we're having it recorded, is because we want you to see that your peer reviews matter. We want you to see that your contribution matters. And it's not just your work contribution, it is your attitude contribution. It is your getting there on time contribution. It's having run your answers through Grammarly first, right? You know, something where you've checked the grammar and the editing of it. And you're also hearing us trying to have some compassion on this first peer review, right? So, you know, could we have just really crushed people? There were some students who had an average peer score of, say, 40%. I ended up giving them probably a 65 or 70 on this first one, right? Because it's a wake-up call. Your peers have said to you, this is unacceptable, okay? And if you take a 70% and the team got an 80, that person, you know, the team gets a B, Clint, that person now has a 56. Right, that's now an F. And I had some situations where students did profoundly less than the S. So I just want the students to know that Clint and I and Shalini, we do get together. We want to make sure that how we do this is comparable and equitable, but it's also fair to those who busted their butts. So that's why we had that little conversation in front of you. Sorry, somebody literally just almost fell through my roof. So, okay, folks. We've answered a little bit of the question of what was wrong with number 4, and so again tried to answer that, and that's an area where I give some points back. I've actually gone through and tried to give you some answers about you know, what should you have had in the Forces 5 Porter's 5 forces model. What should you have had in the general, or something close? And you'll see in some of those answers, I say you could have made an argument, and if you did, fair enough. You know, we're going to give you some credit for making an argument about potentially the seller power when it comes to maybe shipbuilders. But you needed to make the argument. You needed to be able to explain, you know, why you thought that they were able to charge above normal economic profit sort of numbers. Is there anything else in the external environment? Okay, okay. Okay, fair enough. Now that we have given you what are in essence the answers, right, for the external environment, please make sure that you make the adjustments when you are gathering some of this for the final PowerPoint presentation at the end. And even in section 3, template 3, when you're developing your strategy, when you're formulating your strategy, it should be influenced. And according to Michael Porter, it should be dominated by, right, the external environment, because he was all IO economics guy, right? But it should be heavily influenced by what you just developed, right, in terms. And there are a lot of people out there, don't know if they're right, but there are a lot of people saying, you know, cruise ships, they have a bright future. Okay, maybe. I could actually, I think they're going to do okay, but you know, you need to explain why you think that they're going to have, you know, a really good future versus a moderate comeback, things like that. It should influence your strategy. And Clint, I'm going to give one more example for folks. And if you have another one, please. What if you assume that the economy is going to come back and we're going to hit a rebound GDP of 3.5%, which is good, but not huge after such a huge drop off, right? Because it's a relative growing from such a low point, right? So if we come back and we're doing okay, what is your opinion about, you know, the strategy formulation in terms of, do we focus on keeping fewer number of ships in our fleet that are going to very profitable ports and cut costs for a couple of years to make sure that we can rebuild our financial situation? Or do we think the economy is going to come back at 7% rebound? People can't wait to get out of their houses. People are going to be wanting to travel and go cruise and do things they haven't been able to do. And we're going to have every ship available that we can. And we're going to go to every destination that we think we can, because the boom is going to be so big, we don't want to miss it. Right? You need to make some judgment calls and then formulate a strategy based on what you say. Clint, you understand what I'm trying to pitch to them?
I think you're spot on.
Okay. Okay. I'm just trying to give you some examples, folks, the types of things you should think about when you're formulating strategy. Okay, I have covered a lot of the things I wanted to cover. The external analysis I just went over. My comments I just went over. Clint, I'll send them to you if you want. I just shared with you the news report from yesterday about the CDC extending, right, the no cruise. I'm going to go to the internal analysis now, unless there's anybody else who wants to ask anything about the grades, anything. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again. So again, now I told this to the students right before we got on, but it's also aimed at anybody who's listening to the recording, Clint, okay? I went back, and some people, I'm guessing most people have downloaded already the instructions. I hope people have downloaded the instructions for the internal analysis template already. I did add a bullet. So what you find out there in Canvas now has an extra bullet. Please provide a robust explanation of your answers. It's not just, you know, you need to sort of explain. And can you find a current mission and vision statement for, well, this is mission up here, vision's here, but can you find a current mission statement of Carnival Cruise Lines? Is it worth a damn? Does it need to be improved? Now, this needs to be based on what we are teaching you is good and poor mission statements, good and poor vision statements, okay? And I don't want you to just say, here's what it is now, we don't think it's great, and therefore we would write it this way. You know, I want you to explain to me why it's not good. Explain to me why you made the changes that you did, right? Let me know the thought that went behind it and not just sort of 2 bullets. That's what we're trying to get, and I'm trying to just remind you ahead of time, I need more robust answers. Same thing with the vision statement. And so here's a little, it's not a pet peeve because it's not that big of a deal, but give me time frames. A vision statement is the highest level goal of the company. And if you want to be the #1 provider of such and such, and you don't give me a date, I can never fail, right? 25 years from now, and I haven't gotten there yet. I haven't failed because I never gave you a time frame. So a vision without a time frame is sort of meaningless. You need to say, by 2030, we want to be. Now we're getting into a vision statement, okay? Financial status and forecasts. State and explain, state and explain. And a lot of these, you know, the debt to total assets, why? What's the one thing that can quickly put you out of business? Bankruptcy. And what typically puts you into bankruptcy? Default. What is default? When you're not paying back on your debt, right? So if you have a competitive disadvantage to other companies because people like Oil Caribbean better than you, you probably have time to find out why and fix it or try to fix it. But if you are at 90% debt because you didn't leave yourself a cushion and all of a sudden a pandemic hit, and you might not be able to pay your debt coming up in 6 to 8 months, that's a whole different world of hurt, right? And so that's why we're asking you to how much debt compared to their total capital structure do they have? Okay, these are some of the reasons why. Who are the main competitors? Guys, that's right out of IBIS. You should probably know that. You just covered it, right? Strengths and weaknesses. There are positive competencies. Now remember, we elaborated on this compared to what's in the textbook. They talk about core competency. Technically, that's not right. And we added a little bit of trying to explain. How do you get a competitive advantage? Distinctive competency. The VRIS framework says if you don't have something that's rare, that's distinctive, that's different, you can't have a competitive advantage, right? If you have something that's a core competency, it's core, it's important, you have to have it, and you're good at it, but everybody has it too, that's competitive parity. So it's right out of our lessons, but you need to be able to walk through. Is there a competency that is a source of competitive advantage? This is a high rivalry industry. You know, you're going to have to search for things that are earning above normal economic returns for some of these companies, okay? And this worst competencies, I know it sounds funny, but remember, you can be bad at something too. You can be bad at stuff. And so, and again, make sure you provide a robust explanation. There is not as much in this template as there was in the last one. The third one's going to be big. The third one is you have to formulate your strategy. You have to give us a little bit on how you plan to launch and tell the world about your new strategy. And we're going to be asking about financial projections. In your current lecture, and Clint, I don't know if you are sharing some of this too, right? But in your current lecture, and Clinton and I and Shalini and I talked about all this, is we decided as a group to add a couple of pages at the end of that lecture where we specifically are trying to help you guys out by giving you, we just went to Yahoo Finance and pulled the last 4 or 5 years of financial income statements, okay, for Carnival. Now, are they really in depth? No, that's okay actually here. And then we showed you a methodology, an approach to where you can do forecasting, because you need to be able to say, we're recommending these strategies. Here's what we think the incremental effect on the economic performance of this company is going to be over time. And we specifically sort of give you a way of doing that. We even give you some of the numbers, okay? So we're really trying to help you in on that. So the third template is going to be, more robust. The second one, there's a lot of information here, but it's not as much as, you know, the Team Project 1 or Team Project 3. Clint, any comments on this, sir?
Oh, I agree. And just to be clear, the lectures he's referring to are the PowerPoints with the voiceover. So that's your lecture. And they are consistent between our classes so that we're sharing the same information.
We work at that, so yeah. Okay, I'm going to unshare. Okay, so folks, I think we've hit a lot. We did spend a lot of time to try to make sure that we went over with you sort of what the answer probably should have been in the previous template. We're trying to remind you, hey, there was a good question earlier, Clint, is there a length requirement in the answers? And not really. I don't want a paragraph, but I don't want pages, right? I'm expecting paragraphs. Let's see what else. We told you where to look. We showed you that there's an announcement as of yesterday with respect to an extension of the CDC, no cruise. I mean, these are the things you need to be keeping up with in the industry. They're not tough to find. Just do a daily, you know, search on news for the cruise lines. We showed you in those PowerPoints how we've added a couple of pages to specifically, and it's not so much related to Team Project 2. It is going to be related to Team Project 3 when we ask you to do the financial forecasting, but we're telling you where we put it, right? And that it's there. So I'm going to open up the floor, and I'm going to also open it up to Dr. Pertel and see if there are any other questions that have come up. I hope today, and I'm not going to apologize for being a little frustrated. You know, it is what it is. But at the same time, you guys have been kicking butt so far. And now that I'm giving, maybe it's me, right? Maybe now that I'm giving you clearer expectations about robustness, then we'll all be on the same page, right? So, you know, I'll put that on my shoulders. Now, the class averages are still excellent. You know, we're adapting on our side. We're adding a couple of points here and there. Just as, you know, assuming it's us, assuming it's us. So your average grades are actually still slightly above average compared to previous semesters. But it's, you know, you guys are still doing well. I'm rambling at this point, waiting for questions. Will there be any extra credit opportunities? So there, my expectation in my 3 sections is there will probably be one. I haven't crafted it yet. In Dr. Pertel's class, there are a couple, and I don't want to speak for him, but I know right off the bat that if you schedule a one-on-one Zoom with him, that you can earn certain points. I actually can't do that with 277 students, right? It's just something that's a little bit beyond my ability to schedule. So I can't really follow that approach. I will probably therefore create a small extra credit assignment of some kind to give people an equal chance at getting some extra credit points. And a fair question. And if I haven't by Team Project 3, remind me, and I'm sure you will, and you should. We have 3 minutes left officially, and I'm going to hang out here for at least another minute just in case people have questions or comments. We are slowly losing people. It's Robert Schabel's fault.
I do have a question on this internal analysis.
Okay.
Where you want us to insert the stock price chart.
Yeah.
How far do you want it from January till now, or how far?
That's a great question. I don't want just 1 month, but I don't need 10 years necessarily. I didn't really, I don't know if, did I ask for last 12 months specifically in the question? Let me go check.
It doesn't say anywhere.
Yeah, and that's a good question. Thank you for asking. Let me go down here. I'm not going to share my screen with you. What I'm doing now is actually going to that template. Don't copy and paste, make sure the labels are good, make sure it's clear, make it look clean. Yeah, so I don't. So, you know, with the last 12 months is usually sort of the standard sort of approach to that.
Oh, I do see it. Wait a minute. Yeah, I do see that you said insert a chart of the last 12 months. Just below. You have it up there on number 5. I'm sorry. I just
No, it's all good. It's all good. And I didn't immediately see it just now, so I'm glad you asked. Usually, I mean, it is last 12 months. And on that, you know, when on this page here, I'm gonna share again just because I love to share. Yeah, so this is where you're asking about. Look, what I'm trying to do here is, and it's a little thing, but it shows effort, right? Sometimes people will go, they will literally hit print screen, or they will just copy and paste, and they don't do anything with the formatting to make it look legible. And sometimes what's on the screen of a computer doesn't translate well to a copy and paste on a piece of paper. Sometimes the font is so small I can't see it, and there is no legend, you know. So my request of you is just take that extra 5, 8, 10 minutes to create a box, put it in the box, give me what the X and Y axes are in a size that's big enough for me to see. Put a title above it. Tell me that it's the trailing 12 months stock price. You know, just a little bit so it looks a little bit more professional than just literally copy and paste, because sometimes I just can't read it well.
Okay.
That's all that little language was meant to say.
Professor Corey?
Yes, sir. I just picked on you. Did you hear me?
I did. Hey, I was wondering, for the stock price, do you want us to annotate like earnings and anything like that on there?
No. Now, and the reason I say that is my initial answer is, oh yeah, sure, show me. If I do that, people are going to freak. So when I say stock price, just go ahead and give me the straight up stock price. I don't need the earnings per share. I don't need some of that stuff. So now, if you want to do extra cool, nifty things, that's on you, right? But I asked for stock price. Stock price is fine.
All right, appreciate it.
Yeah, somebody wrote me a chat. For the group assignment, there will not be an individual alternative assignment offered instead. Individual assignment version of the group assignment instead. You know, Andy, I don't know that I understand your question. And you can come back and talk to me in an email, but group individual alternative assignment. Yeah, so based on what I think I'm reading, the answer is no. You know, this class is tough in a number of ways. One, you're going through a lot of information. You're having to do a lot of research. You're having to accumulate and write and work with teams. And the team part is actually important here. And it's been important for the 40 years that this class has been taught. And team dynamics can be challenging. And for those of you who have a good team and everybody's contributing, hallelujah, good on you. Because other people are dealing with the issue of team dynamics. So yeah, for group assignments, no. And that's a tough part of the class. But that's the way it's always been, and it's appropriate to say to people that the group project is going to affect the grades of everybody in the group, right? So I don't know if that's what you're asking, Andy, and it's unfortunate sometimes when 2 out of the 6 people are doing all the work, but that's where the peer reviews hopefully come in and other people get docked for it. Clint, do you have any comment on that? I think I'm interpreting the question correctly about group projects will stay group projects.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
he
still
said
doesn't answer the question. So yeah, appreciate the feedback. But yeah, I think I agree with what you said.
It's tough. You know, sometimes the teams, you just want to choke each other. Just kidding.
Yeah.
But
I will say this though, this is the real world. When you get into the real world and there's a 360 review in your company or a management review, the other concern I have are students that blanket give everybody 100. And when I see that, especially when they're getting 60s and 70s, for their review score, that's strange. And it's also very concerning when I see like a group of 4, 3 people give a person a 0, and then one person blanket gives 100s to everybody. That's also a concern.
It is. I actually ended up not calling people out on that, Clint.
Yeah.
But yeah, you look at that and you just kind of, your head kind of turns a little sideways on that.
Yeah, if that's the way you go through your corporate life, it won't last long.
No, but this is
got to be fair to yourself and to your peers. So.
It's not corporate life quite yet.
Yeah, but it's as close as you can get right now. So yeah.
Well, folks, thank you for the questions that you offered. I am ready and willing for any other questions. Otherwise, you know, I think we have 2 more weeks before the, I don't know, timing wise, I didn't check, but I think it's like 2 more weeks before the internal ones due. If you're working on it now, you should be fine, right? To be able to get some of that stuff, but please don't wait until the very last minute. And I don't know what other guidance to give you guys. I think we're done, unless there's any other questions. Oh, Professor, want to clarify Carnival Cruise Lines is, yeah, we want Carnival Corp. Carnival Corp. Yeah. Thank you, Parker. I appreciate it, man. Thank you, Andrea. People are writing a couple of nice comments there, so thank you. I don't know if the comments come through on the recording, Clint, so I was always afraid that maybe they did, but I heard somebody tell me last week that they
did. It depends on your settings. If it either does or it comes through as a separate file, depends on how you have it set up.
Okay.
When you download it, you'll see a separate file.
Okay, I'm not getting any more questions, so Clint, unless you have any final words, we're done.
Nope. See everybody next week. My class will see your grades very soon. So.
Thank you, everybody. Please share with your teams. Thanks.
Yeah.